Welcome, everybody, to today's knowledge series, Gifts and Wills, Making Proactive Approaches. We are pleased to have you join us for today's session. I am Matt Morse, the Director of Private Investment Capability for Creative Australia. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands in which we join today and pay our respects to their elders past and present. I join you from the lands of the Wurundjeri people and pay my respects. Before we begin, there's a few technical points, housekeeping points to keep in mind, so I'll run through these. Today's webinar will be recorded and published on the Creative Australia's website for educational purposes. And for this reason, we ask you to keep your microphones on mute for the duration of the webinar. We will, and this is really important, make time for questions at the end of the presentation. And to help us streamline that process, please type your questions in the Zoom Q&A box, which is at the bottom of your screen, throughout the session. I really encourage you to ask as many questions as you possibly can, and then they'll be compiled for Dan at the completion of the presentation. We also have two amazing Auslan interpreters, Jody and Erin, signing for us today. Okay, gifts and wills. We all know that the biggest intergenerational wealth transfer is here. Trillions of dollars are set to change hands in the coming decades, making this the most important time for securing long-term funding for our sector. But let's look at the gap. Studies show that up to 2/3 of Australians would be happy to be prompted about leaving a charitable gift in their will. As many as 25% of Australians actually want to leave something to a cause that's important to them. Yet only 7% of wills currently include a charitable bequest. That difference, the gap between willingness and action, represents hundreds of millions of dollars of potential lost support for the arts and creative industries. This webinar is about closing that gap. It's about making the strategic shift from a passive, fingers crossed model to a powerful, proactive approach that ensures that our sector and your organization secures this vital piece of the legacy pie. Okay, enough from me. I'd like to introduce you to today's presenter, Dan Greaves from Marlin Communications. Dan is Creative Director and co-owner of Marlin Communications. Marlin is a specialist agency that only works for for-purpose organizations, including charities, sporting organizations, schools, universities, and most importantly, arts organizations. They have helped over 100 Australian charities develop effective cases for support, campaigns, and sustainable income generation programs. And Dan is also an elected fellow of the Fundraising Institute of Australia. Dan, welcome to today's knowledge series. Great to have you.
Thank you so much, Matt, for that introduction. And thank you, everybody, for registering and attending today's session. There are many of you online, and I can stress to you all that you will be receiving the slide deck, and the recording, of course, as Matt described, is going to be available as well. So in terms of your note-taking, please feel free to capture the things that I'm sharing, but use it to really reflect on how does that apply to your situation, your organization, because there's going to be plenty of time for questions at the end. We're aiming for at least 20 minutes, if not a little bit more. So why am I speaking to you today about this topic? I've been fortunate that early in my career, I decided to focus on working with charities and for-purpose organizations. I had studied as a psychologist and have a postgraduate in applied psychology. And I guess that my sort of interest in human behavior and perhaps pro-social behavior never quite left me. So after 5 years working in mainstream advertising and marketing, I decided to focus on charities. I've been really blessed to be able to work with some amazing organizations. And now through my company, Marlin Communications, we do contribute to raising over $40 million each year. relevance to you guys is that over the course of my career, I have worked alongside Tate in London, Sydney Opera House, Royal Botanic Gardens, Victoria, and of course, Creative Australia. I am an elected fellow of the Fundraising Institute of Australia. I'm a passionate fundraiser, and I recognize that you all have such a broad kind of job. You need to be data literate, you need to be good at communications, you need to be good at interpersonal relationships, you need to be good at strategy. So I like to build people's capacity to be able to do the best that they can. You're all passionate about what your organizations do and the art and creative that they create. You want to build your supporter bases. So today is about offering you some pointers and tips for doing just that. As I mentioned, I am a fellow of the FIA. I'm providing 8 courses a year through the FIA. I'm passionate about that idea of building people's knowledge and capacity so they can do the best job they can. But alongside that, I'm also on the advisory panel of an initiative called the Benchmarking Project. And I'll be using some of the information from their reports today. A group of us kind of got together and decided it would be very helpful for the for-purpose sector if there was a way of understanding what does success really look like. Is it good to have around 2% of your supporters confirming that they've left you a gift in their will, or should it be more like 5%? Do we know whether the average gift in will is multiple millions of dollars and really sort of gives us an indication that it's really the very wealthy people that partake in that type of giving? Or is it a bit more humbler and something that actually, or the ordinary Australian takes part in as well? These are the things that the benchmarking project has helped us to actually truly understand. A group of organizations submit all of their transactional data. It is, of course, made anonymous, no credit card details, no payment details, no names and addresses. But what it enables the analysts at the benchmarking project to therefore do is look at the big picture of how people give, how much they give, how frequent they give, who are the people that go on to make gifts in wills, all of those kind of things. So we're going to be using some of that data today. Thank you to them for allowing me to continue to share and propagate the knowledge that they're creating. So today, I am gonna start off with the. Does that show? Anyway, did that show up on yours? I just got a little alert, and I'm just mindful. I hope that that doesn't pop up every time, pop up on your screens as well. Today we're going to start off with a description of the landscape. I want you to have access to the data that I hope inspires you to be invested in this. You've already registered and are attending today, so I know that you are interested in this, but I want you to become really invested in championing this strategy for raising money for your organization. But I also want you to be able to use that data for your stakeholder engagement and influence. This is an approach that requires your time, and that is an investment from your organizations. So I want you to have access to some of the data that can justify that. Then we'll get to 3 examples of practical things that you can start to build into your approach. I'm referring to those as scalable communications, things that will help you to do more than is capable for one person to do by using direct marketing communications to enable you to reach more people. And then finally, as I said, time for questions at the end. So let's have a look at the landscape. Why should you be listening to this? Or, as I say, why should your stakeholders and the people that you need to influence be listening to you in regards to this area? Now, there are a lot of approaches to fundraising. There's a lot of information on this slide. I don't expect you to take it all in. It's intended to help you sort of see one of the ways that I've really mastered thinking about an overarching fundraising strategy. The representation here is of 4 quadrants. Over on the left-hand side, we have examples of fundraising that actually it's possible to get a return on investment from within a year which is very helpful in terms of your organization's budget cycle. On the right-hand side, we have examples of things that take a little bit longer to actually provide that return on investment. You start to build relationships with individuals and supporters, but they don't necessarily then become positive in terms of the income that's returned until further down the track, 2 to 3 years or even further. Now, you'll notice that gift in wills is over on the right-hand side. And that is, of course, because you start the conversation with people about making this kind of generous gift, but we don't necessarily know when they're going to pass away. We don't know when that money is then going to be actualized and be received by your organization. In case you're wondering, the other distinction I make is one that sort of creates an above the horizon and one that's below the horizon. And this pertains to the size of the gifts that people make. So we have major donors in the top left-hand quadrant. It is possible to form and nurture relationships with major donors and encourage them to give on an annual basis. Whereas on the right-hand side, another form of major gift coming from the gift in wills area below, not discussing these today. On the left-hand side, getting new supporters and hanging on to them, micro supporters giving around $50, $100, $150. People are taking part in community fundraising, people taking part in giving days, which of course huge at the moment. And on the right-hand side, we have more of a regular giving relationship where people are committing to a $30 or $40 per month sort of subscription style of giving. In the center, of course, we have these important tools at your disposal, your brand, your narrative, your case for support, and around that, your digital ecosystem, the ability to capture data, interact with people, and monitor how they're engaging with you. Now, today, we're just focusing on this top right-hand corner. This does enable you to contextualize for your stakeholders that this is one fundraising strategy and approach. So why do I advocate for you doing it? If it's not necessarily going to provide you with a return within this year's budget cycle, why is it worth pursuing? Well, the reality is that people want to do this. In that fantastic intro that Matt gave, he referred to some of the numbers that research has uncovered about Australians. Australians get this. They think it's a good idea. When you start to have conversations with your audience, you're not going to be really sort of faced with a situation where they're like, what are you talking about? I've never heard of this thing. The majority of people have heard of it and think it's a good idea. In fact, as Matt shared, 25% of Australians would really like to leave something to a cause that's important to them. But only 7% of wills at the moment actually do include a charitable bequest. So I don't know about you, but as someone who's been a director of fundraising communications, when I hear that people want to give money to causes that they care about, I go, great, okay, how do I make sure that we're on the receiving end of that? How do I make sure that they know that they can do it to my organization and support our mission and our work? The other reason why I'm interested in this right now is also, as Matt sort of suggested, there is a particular demographic sort of phenomena happening. We already know that giving is skewed to your stage of life. Now, it's pretty easy to understand that just by experiencing life and having a look around you. When we're younger, we don't tend to have much money. We have a lot of time and energy, but also we're trying to really sort of create the foundations for the rest of our lives. So we're accumulating experiences, spending money, enjoying the curiosity of that life stage. As we then move into sort of middle age, we start to settle. We, of course, want to create the security of our own homes. We might start to have mortgages. We might start families and be sort of expending money on children. And really what this therefore sort of leads to is that the most generous generations are those who've been through those stages and are out the other side. They're kind of approaching retirement or in retirement. So for us, In the world today, we refer to them as the silent generation or the boomer generation. And in fact, the benchmarking project data shows us that these are the generations that are showing up the most in terms of who's giving. You can see here on this chart here, not expecting you to be able to see the small details. I can just read them out to you really, but the two big columns here are the silent generation on the far left and boomer next to them. You can see Gen X in the middle, a little bit less, Gen Y, a little bit lower, and then finally Gen Z. So something to note here, if you have conversations with your board or with your colleagues about we need to be getting younger donors, we need to be getting younger donors, just make sure that you're actually really talking about Gen X. Gen Z and Gen Y, they just don't have the money. It's not that they don't love your organization and other causes and have passions and interests, but they just don't have the money. They're less likely to be capable of giving. So when you talk about going for younger audiences, please anchor that as Gen X. But I don't even really want to talk to you about Gen X today. I want you to be focused on the boomers and the silent generation. They're obviously reaching a stage of life where their own mortality is very real to them. And that becomes a factor in, of course, what we are all aware of, this idea of the great intergenerational wealth transfer. We know that boomers and silent generation have been fortunate. They have worked hard, but they have also been a part of an era within the Australian sort of economic growth. There will be many people who would regard themselves as quite ordinary Australians who've worked hard but bought property, and that property has gone up and up and up in value. And this is all contributing to this idea of when this generation passes, they are going to be passing on a great deal of wealth. They're financially strong generations. So we predict there is going to be a surge in income in the form of bequests, people leaving money to charity. But we need to be the organizations who are actually raising attention to the fact that we can be the recipients of those people's generosity. After they've taken care of their families, after they've taken care of their loved ones, there is a proportion of their estate that is really available to organizations if you start to form the relationships and have the conversations now. Our research shows that the average gift is around $116,000. So imagine what receiving 2, 5, or even 10 of those gifts could do to your organization. It is a major gift strategy. A few gifts of this size and larger are transformational. So using this number to help your stakeholders understand why would we be investing our time and our resources in trying to influence people to choose us as a gift in will. Research shows that, again, from the benchmarking project, for those Australian charities who are taking part, now imagine that these are people like Salvation Army, Cancer Council, Heart Foundation, well-established organizations, people recognizing them as household brands, RSPCA and such like. So it can be interesting to kind of consider, well, where does their income come from? The green part of this pie chart here shows us that 22.6% of the money that came from individuals to those charities, 1.66 billion, 22.6% of that 1.66 billion came from Gift in Will's income. So that gives us a kind of an indication of, well, if your organization isn't getting around 20% of its revenue from Gift in Wills, you're underperforming in this fundraising area. So let's have a look at what some old research, but super relevant to you all, revealed when Creative Partnerships Australia did this research in 2023. They were able to ascertain that actually income from bequests from Gift in Wills was actually only 4% of the income that arts and cultural organisations in Australia were receiving. So much, much lower than that 20, 22% that other charities are receiving. Now, we could kind of have a bit of a think about that and go, well, yes, of course, people think that those causes are more worthy. But I want to now just spend a little bit of time just challenging that. And I really want you to now sort of just come with me a little bit to just explore, do you know why people actually make this very, very profound act of generosity? And when you contemplate and really think about why they do it, I hope that I can convince you that this is actually a really relevant form of fundraising to you in the arts sector. The final piece of data that I want you to be aware of is that it is shown that 40% of Gifting Wheel's income is coming from donors in the higher socioeconomic deciles. So if you are aware that your existing community and perhaps some past supporters are already represented in those upper deciles, then that's just a further nod to sort of suggest to you, you already have a contact with somebody who is a likely prospect to leave you a gifting will. But now let's talk about this more sort of psychological aspect of it. No one really makes a decision just because of a number. They need a story, including you and including your stakeholders. So why do people leave a gift in their will? Benjamin Franklin is credited with saying there's two certainties in life, death and taxes. We know that we are mortal beings, but the reality is we don't think about it. It's a really uncomfortable subject. In fact, some people refer to it as a serious psychological problem. We seem to go through our lives, particularly early sort of phases of life, really considering ourselves relatively invincible. And certainly most of the health charities that I work alongside, therefore, are faced with communities of people who then, when they're diagnosed with something quite life-threatening or close to life-threatening, they're devastated because it had never occurred to them before that they were that vulnerable. We just ignore it. We don't think about it. Now, as people get older, of course, they think about it all the time. They're confronted with aches and pains. Their friends and family members, people close to them, are passing away. So to them, it's not something that they don't think about and talk about. And I raise this because sometimes the generation who are in fundraising, myself included, are not the same generation of the audience that we're talking to. And so it helps to really start to kind of go, this audience, much more familiar with the idea of their mortality than we are. Now, when the psychologists sort of reveal that when people are faced with a psychological problem, we either ignore it, and that's called avoidance, or we actually try to figure out a way to make it fit within our own heads. When it comes to the subject of our own death, the phenomena that people will often turn to is referred to as symbolic immortality. How can I convince myself that actually I matter enough that I am going to live on after my death? How will people remember me? Now, many of us are drawn into, therefore, sort of recognizing that it's our children or our families that will, of course, remember us, or our friendship groups, and that will live on in the memories of those people. But then we're also drawn to looking at, well, what are the other sort of permanent things that I might be leaving behind? And a gifting will actually fits into that category very nicely. Living on after death isn't really about the religious afterlife. It's about people searching for those parts of their own identity, their values, their story that are going to continue on after their death. And that continuation is what's called symbolic immortality. And it really just highlights the question, what are people going to say about me when I'm gone? They'll be asking themselves these kind of questions. What was the point of my life? How will I matter once I'm gone? What will my kids think of me? What do I really care about? Deep, deep psychological and philosophical questions about who am I and why did my life matter? And that's where your invitation to consider a gift in will meets a genuine need that people have and that your audience has. Now, let's consider art specifically. Art is an important part of Australian life, of course. 97% of Australians engaging with some sort of art form on a regular basis. That encompasses reading, listening, going to events, creating art, going to institutions, many of which are represented in the attendees today. 24% of the population creating art. So art and creative activities are a part of people's life, and perhaps it's relatively easy for us to therefore kind of consider, why wouldn't people want that to continue? Why wouldn't that be a part of what they wish to be remembered for after they've passed? We also know people recognize that art brings people together. It contributes to well-being. It contributes to social cohesion. Why wouldn't they want that to continue after they've passed? We would suggest that since people recognize art is good for people and good for society, actually the way that you position an invitation to leave a gift in their will to your organization really needs to tap into that, really needs to look at the ways that someone's identity as an artist, an art appreciator, a creator, someone who enjoys the cohesion and the community, the thoughts and thought-provoking nature of art, that really these are the things that we can point out to people. These are the gifts that you will actually be leaving behind and that you will be remembered for. I would suggest, and certainly our exposure to some of the organizations that we've worked alongside, the people who are connected to your organizations already as supporters or as members of your community, they care about your art form, your art expression, just as much as people care about the environment, or they care about social inequity, or a particular health issue. I encourage you to kind of consider that this is about trying to ensure that you understand what is it about their identity that you can foster this kind of recognition that that's what can live on. That's how their gifting will enable that part of them to live on after they've passed. Now, we'll talk a little bit about how this happens in the second section, but just keep in mind that if you have made the profound gesture to leave an organization a gifting will, and your family are then sat around hearing that news and they go, that doesn't surprise me. It's really that phenomena that we're talking about. It's that sort of recognition of course, they've always been a music lover. They've always been someone who's appreciated the art. They've always enjoyed going to that gallery or that institution. They've always enjoyed the idea that new generations of Australians should also benefit from that art form. That's really what we're encouraging you to think of. Let me show you some examples of the way that other organizations do it so that you can start to think, oh, okay, I understand how this might work for our organization. Now, these are non-arts organizations. So here's Medicine Sans Frontières. Now, many people have heard of Medicine Sans Frontières. They're a top five charity. They support people, particularly after disasters, but they provide medical aid. Okay, so super tangible what they're doing. Okay, so you might sort of think, well, surely, therefore, what we're saying to people is if you give us money, we'll be able to provide more medical aid after you've passed away. That's a transaction. It's not what it's about. It's actually about saying to people the principle that you have appreciated about the way that we work, the fact that we don't put up with the bureaucracy of getting in the way of providing medical aid. We just get in there and we provide it. It doesn't matter if there's a war zone that's dangerous. It doesn't matter if governments can't agree. We just get in there and we make it happen because that's our priority. Now, that's a part of someone's identity, this kind of no nonsense, no bull kind of approach to if people need something, we should be providing it. That's the part of the identity that this program taps into, a legacy that will know no borders. By remembering Médecins Sans Frontières with a bequest in your will, you're making a commitment to continue to provide medical assistance to people in need, whoever and wherever they may be. It's actually really about revealing, I have no prejudice I want people who are suffering to receive support from professional medical teams. Within the materials, now I want you to see some of the design work that goes into these type of materials because it's really reflective of the sort of calm, considered sort of approach that I encourage you to take. Okay, this isn't a giving day. This isn't about urgent, make this decision today, pressure, pressure. It's not that. It's actually quite, it's very considered, very calm, very steady. But really, this particular spread is pulling out those values that we want people to kind of go, this really does matter to me. Independence, neutrality, courage, doing what it takes. We're thinking about how do they wish to be remembered, not just as a provider of money, but actually someone who had principles and they even wanted those principles to live on. Let's look at another example. Now that I've been through that one in detail, you could see the pattern emerging from these other examples. This is Vinnie's. Most people have heard of Vinnie's. We see them in the shops and of course, recognize their connection to the huge force of volunteers that they have. Here's very simple, a legacy for good. This is for Vinnie's Victoria, by the way. And we're highlighting what does that really say about the audience? This idea of works of love and kindness and just doing good, really carrying on. Now, for this particular organization, and this could apply to yours, we're going all the way back to the founding story. What was the principle that kind of created this movement in the first place, this organization in the first place, and tapping back into that? For those of you who don't know, this organization was created by someone who said, why are we all sitting around talking about what people need? Why don't we just get on and do it? Of course, many charitable organizations founded on such kind of an obvious, but still sometimes underrated thought that we just need to get on with doing things. And that's what this taps into as well. Final one from WWF. I've deliberately picked ones that I believe that you would be like, yeah, I kind of understand what they do, so that you can see these aren't organized. These organizations are not banging on about how will we use the money and what are we going to. It's actually talking to the audience about their identity. Okay, when did you fall in love with nature? Is today the day you protect it forever? Inside the world you have to give is a world filled with beauty. So we're starting to activate that nature lover's sense of, I want the world to be, though I recognize the world can be and is a beautiful place. That's what I want it to be like for a very, very long time. Nature, life, love. This is the world you have to give. Uh, your will can be your lasting legacy to the world you love. What a beautiful, profound sentiment. And that's really what this style of communication you'll see now. We're going to move into the second section. I want to share with you some techniques for how you can do the same for your organization. If we take care of nature, nature would take care of us. So David Attenborough is not a member of the WWF Australia team, but of course, hugely recognizable. It's a great technique to borrow from people who have said these quotes can be used by different organizations, really sort of get people to kind of lift their heads to something really big. What is the way that we want people to experience life in the future? What would the world be like without your art form and your art institution? How would the world be lesser? And what would that say to your audience? Wouldn't that be a shame if that couldn't exist? Our connection to nature is a gift. The places you love, their wonder and their majesty must be protected, and they can be with your help. A gift in your will is much more than a donation. It is a statement of your belief in a future where humans live in harmony with nature and where we can create everlasting havens for wildlife and a healthy planet for people. I hope you get the idea. Please think big. My takeaway and recommendation for you from that part around the psychology behind why people leave a gift in their will. It is a profound act. It is a profound form of giving, but that, I believe, is equaled by the power of art. Art unites us. It brings people together to create a shared feeling, and it helps us take a step towards good well-being, towards empathy, and even harmony. These are the things that I would encourage you to elevate your pitch to be about. Both arts and gifting wheels are really potent ways for humans to transcend their own mortality and make a lasting mark on their world. Okay, so now let's get into some practical things for you to consider. Um, we had some good brainstorms and chats with the excellent team at Creative Australia to really craft this next section to help you sort of walk away from this webinar with some quite tangible things, I hope you agree, to be able to sort of go, actually, that's within my grasp. I can start to make that happen. Now, they do increase in difficulty as I go through, so be prepared and expect that. Okay, so I shared with you my sort of origin story included studying psychology. Much of what I learned and then put into practice as an applied psychologist has now been called behavioral science. One of the standout behavioral scientists is this chap, BJ Fogg from Stanford University, because he bombastically described that he had cracked something as a universal formula for every behavior. Everything that we do, he describes every behavior happens when motivation, ability, and a prompt come together at the same moment. Motivation, ability, and prompt coming together at the same moment. Now, I was involved in some research way back with the British government that was all around why do some people exercise and some people don't? And ironically, one of the things that we discovered was that the communications that were being used to inspire people to come to gyms and fitness programs and so on, they were overly using imagery of people's bodies. And those people didn't look like the audience. They were Arnold Schwarzenegger style chaps with bulging muscles, and they were models wearing bikinis. And the majority of us don't associate with that look and appearance. And so we were not motivated by those communications. So I kind of became interested in this. And then it dawned on me as I really entered the world of fundraising that fundraising is about prompting people. It's about giving people that signal to act. It's not always the case that we're introducing something to someone and they're like, oh yeah, I really hadn't thought about that. I didn't realize that the world would be lesser without this form of music, or I didn't realize how much I loved this type of theatre. Of course, they already know all of those things. Actually, a lot of what we need to do is ensure that we understand what they already think and feel, and then use that to kind of inspire them, motivate them, address things that might otherwise be kind of pulling them away from being motivated to do something, like the comfort of their sofa, for example, in terms of fitness programs. But that actually all fundraising requires somebody to signal to act. That's what fundraisers are. They are the person who takes responsibility for saying, I'm not just going to sit back and hope that everybody floods to our website today and makes a generous donation. I'm actually going to get out there and ask people. I'm going to invite them to come and give to our organization. Now, I've represented BJ Fogg's sort of formula here. Every behavior is the combination of motivation, ability, and a prompt. Everything that you do in fundraising can come back to this. Are you being savvy about making things simple to do? You know, does your website really work? If you're sending people an invitation to give, do you include a response form and a response envelope? Do you make it easy for them to do those kind of things? Now, making a gift in their will is not easy, right? It requires multiple steps. I'm going to decide to do it. I'm going to talk to my family about it. I'm going to go and dig out my will. I'm going to get the wording changed. I'm going to possibly have to talk to a legal representative. Like there's a lot of steps involved. So we need to be clear. We've got to motivate people to get through those steps. And we actually need to therefore be comfortable that we are signaling to them to do so, that we are the prompt. Your organization can be involved in those factors becoming more optimal so that the behavior actually happens. So here's a look at some of the things that drain people's motivation to leave a gift in will. One of the ways we look at that gap between if they have good intention, 25% of people want to do this, but only 7% of wills actually include it, there must be things getting in the way. They already have the motivation. So this must be something that has quite a lot of what's sometimes called friction, which just slows us down, makes us kind of go, yeah, yeah, I'm not going to do it. Some people may assume gifts in wills are for a different type of person. That's not for the research proves this. Oh, that's not for me. That's for very, very, very wealthy people. I don't really have money. People have very much experienced a life of relatively thinking about themselves as quite humble, even though they may have an estate that's $3 million or more because of their house price rising. Um, so, how do we actually ensure that they see the relevance of this form of giving to them? Alongside that, people have anxiety. They are thinking, and you will be inspiring them to think, how will people remember you after you've passed? And then the anxiety of, will my family feel as though I have taken their inheritance and given it to some other organization? Of course, people are concerned about these things. So the technique that I recommend is also from the field of behavioral science, which is using social proof. Social proof can settle both of these concerns. You can reassure your audience by sharing stories of people who have already done it, or from the family members of those who have passed and so have experienced what it's like to discover and to know and to have that glow of pride that their family member actually did leave a gift in their will. So it's about finding stories, finding examples of people whose story you can share that are actually relatable. Okay, so I'm going to share with you some examples of this happening again from other types of organizations so that you can kind of see this is why these organizations are achieving 20% of their income from gift in wills, whereas perhaps your arts organization isn't. They're doing this. Okay, they're featuring ordinary feeling Australians who are just describing this is why I've decided to do it. These are sometimes referred to as living bequesters. So they're actually still people who are enjoying their lives, but are prepared to kind of go, yeah, I'll go on the record. I'll share with people why I'm doing it. I recommend that you find those people who you can say, please, will you be the face of some of our materials so that we can start to share these stories. So Margaret, for example, she watched breast cancer impact 3 generations of her family. And when her best friend was diagnosed, she herself turned to cancer counsel. So she's been a service user. She's been appreciative of the work that cancer counsel has done and the impact it's had on her life. And hence she's wanting to kind of really, through gratitude, say, I want to leave some money towards this organization so that they can continue what I've experienced in my lifetime and benefited from. I wanted to start with this because I think that's relevant to your organizations too. If people have benefited and felt appreciation for what your organization has provided them and continues to provide them in their lives, maybe actually it's worth really profiling and showcasing that people want to express that gratitude through leaving a gift in their will. They may not have lots of disposable income right now or money right now, but they know that after they pass, there would be a percentage of their estate that they can leave. Another example, people who perhaps have had a career connected to a given cause and an organization, or it's just been a consistent passion, hobby, something that they've spent time on. Now, I'll show you here an example on the right-hand side from somebody who has passed, and it's from their daughter, Meredith. Dad's first experience of the natural environment was with his father in the Adelaide Hills. Later, his work took him to the Flinders Ranges and up north into Central Australia. The beauty of the landscape impressed itself upon Dad, and he photographed magnificent trees and colourful carpets of wildflowers after rain. Okay, we're revealing the passion that somebody had so that the audience reading it are like, yeah, that speaks to me actually. I am somebody who likes to go out into nature and take photographs. I do like to travel around Australia and marvel at the landscape. And so by recognizing those behaviors, they're no longer looking at this chap and going, am I as wealthy as him? He seems to be on a boat. Does that mean I'm supposed to have a boat? They're not thinking about those things. They're thinking about whether they share the sort of passions and interests that then lead to this type of behavior. Now, of course, with this particular one, worth pointing out, the family knew of Dad's support for Bush Heritage, and we share his love for our environment. We are proud of Dad's bequest and feel that Bush Heritage properties are part of his legacy and that he is in good company. Okay, so really dealing with that question of anxiety. On the left-hand side, and of course you'll have access to these so you can read them. Um, the wonderful thing about working in fundraising is, of course, you can look at other people's communications and start to kind of go, well, how's that working, and how might I apply that to our situation? This left-hand side one, somebody leaving money to a children's charity whose entire life and their career, and after their career, their volunteering in retirement was centered around children. So drawing that connection to, if you're that type of person, then perhaps this is another behavior that you can adopt, leaving a gift in your will. Some examples here from some organizations, both dealing with the environment, and our approach with them has been to really sort of reflect what's this going to do for future generations of Australians, maybe your own family, future generations of them, but maybe even just more broadly. What is that world going to be like in the future? And I think that that's applicable again to arts organizations as well. So thinking about the future generations as the beneficiaries of a gift in will. If you can see that this is something that's of benefit to you and your generation now, maybe you'd like to also create that benefit for future generations by leaving a gift in your will. Now, what this is doing is doing all of this through storytelling about people who've already made that decision. And that social proof phenomena is what drives up people's kind of sense of this is relevant to me. This isn't just an organization promoting something that's good for them. It's actually people who I can relate to actually saying, I recommend this actually. I've made this decision and this is why. Now, tip for those of you who are sort of looking at this and going, yeah, but hang on a second, we've come to this webinar because we're just starting our journey. That's okay. Go and create the scenario. Talk to your leadership group, talk to your board members, talk to your long-standing volunteers, and on an individual basis, start to nurture them to become your first bequesters, the first group of people that you know are leaving you a gift in their will, and then use them to become the face that features in this social proof. Okay, so make it happen. I've done this in various times throughout my career in many forms of giving. So launching regular giving programs, wanting to do social proof techniques, so therefore being the first regular giver and featuring, wanting to promote participation in a marathon or in a long bike ride, and so therefore participating in it myself, getting photographed, and then becoming the testimonial. It's okay, it's still truthful, it's still real, but don't get held up therefore by kind of going, well, these mysterious strangers don't exist. Go and make it happen. Start converting the very people who are already passionate and connected to your organization, and then get these stories out far and wide, because you are now no longer trying to create an advert for your Gift in Wills program. You're actually sharing a story of a real person talking about why they've decided to do this. And I would suggest that therefore is more appropriate content for a whole host of situations. It can be used as a poster in areas with long dwell time, like corridors, of where people are waiting to get tickets or waiting to gain entry. It can be used in programs for your arts organization. It can appear on your website. And of course, it can go out via your social channels where people are interested in people's stories already. So get it out there. I'm spending the most time on this one because this is my absolute entry level for everybody. And it's applicable to you all. So please make sure that you start thinking about how we're going to make this happen if you don't do something like this already. Okay, second tip. Let's come back to this idea of What are the problems and how can we solve them? So on the left-hand side here, people may hesitate whether it's really right for them. Now that you've kind of got them kind of inspired to be thinking, how do I want to be remembered? And then this might be the point where they go, well, actually, I'm more of a dog lover than I am somebody who wants to be remembered as supporting this arts or institution. So we've got to look at a factor there, which is called resonance. Then some may wonder about the loss of control over how their money is going to be used. They're not going to be around to watch how you spend it. So how are we going to deal with that? How are we going to make them feel connected to something that they do have control over? Our suggestion, and what we have put into practice with other organizations that works, is get them to reflect on history, get them to reflect back on a lifetime of connection to your particular art form and your institution, your organization, but also link that to stories of your organization's remarkable history. Okay, so I'll show you some examples so that you get what we mean by that. But therefore, what we're encouraging you to kind of do is get them thinking about where were they when these things in your organization's history were happening, or how has this shown up repeatedly throughout their life? Get them to pause and reflect on that. Again, quite a sort of steady, slow sort of suggestion for a communication here. So here's an example from the Wilderness Society. You can see the full, this is a mail pack that's going out to their supporters, a small number of supporters on a regular basis. And what we're showing within here is recognizable events from the history of all of Australia's conservation movement, which is particularly linked to the Wilderness Society's entire reason for existing, as you'll see in a second. So what we have here, I wanted to show you, these are appearing as separate cards, really, separate sheets of paper, because the whole tempo of this communication is very slow, very reflective, deliberately slowing people down to kind of contemplate these moments, okay? We'll show you some of them a bit more close up so you can kind of go, oh yeah, I would kind of get this. So moments within of protest when Tasmanians were outraged, the protesters on the right-hand side really wanting to ensure that the Franklin wasn't going to get dammed, and pointing out to people, where were you? The back of these is really asking them to do that self-reflection. Do you remember when this was happening? Do you remember how effective it was? Do you remember what it represented as a real moment of Australians turning around and saying, this isn't Australia. This isn't what we want. We want a place where people are able to protect the environment, not businesses with vested interests able to just bulldoze and get what they want. There's a long copy on the back, really conversational in style, though, really getting inside people's heads, and encouraging them to then make the connection between these things that have been happening. They're the things that are going to continue after you've passed. This is the bit that matters. It's kind of using that kind of awareness of, okay, yes, I'm connected to these things. That's what's going to continue. It may not look identical in the future, but it's going to have the same ethos. It's going to have the same philosophical intent or mission, if you like. Your organization should curate really the historical moments that create this thread of, you see how we've really consistently been about this thing, and we will continue to be into the future as well, just so that you're addressing that idea of control. Here's a different approach with a different organization. Again, sort of encouraging you to kind of go, well, how would this sort of work for us? And this might therefore be appropriate if you're not confident that you have a very long history. You might be a newer organization. So think about whether there's a way to actually tap into what's their own history. So for Child Fund Australia, we've got people to genuinely start to go through what was their childhood like, or what's their career been like. We asked a series of questions. Some were more relevant to different people. And we laid it out almost like a journal and suggested to people, take the time to reflect on your life, to reflect on what you think about childhood, why it mattered to you. Maybe you weren't that enamored with your own childhood, and that inspires you to think, well, they're the type of children that I want to ensure are supported into the future. or maybe you're extremely grateful for your own childhood, and that's what you want to actually ensure is created and provided for more people in the future as well. So get them to really reflect on what's their personal story and connection to the very subject that you deal with and that your mission is connected to. This is then a good opportunity for me to point out when you're communicating with people in these ways, make sure you include response forms. Make sure you include the ability for them to come back to you with, you know, an indication of what did that mean to them? Does this mean that they're now considering this act of leaving a gift in their will? Would they perhaps like some more information about that? Would they actually really appreciate a conversation? This particular one with Child Fund, I'm considering making a gift in my will and would like to discuss this further. Please call me on space for telephone number. My preferred days are these. My preferred times are these. Or please contact me in 6 months and keep me informed. Or I've already done it. I've already included a gift in my will. And so opportunities for you then to know, well, where are they at in this sort of decision-making process? We know it's not easy. We know it requires several steps. Of course, what Child Fund are doing very smartly here is saying, we are here to help you. And that leads quite neatly into our third idea. So to reflect on the learning from that second bit, performances, exhibitions, festivals, they've all been peak moments in people's lives, things that they've looked forward to, anticipated, and then enjoyed. Okay, so why not gather those and invite your community to reflect on where were they when those events were happening. And then there are things like teachers, lessons, mistakes that they may have made if they are a creator themselves. If when they were learning a particular form of music, the teacher who inspired them and helped them, these all form part of someone's art loving identity. So help your community to reconnect with those memories and therefore see the lifelong passion that they had that can continue. Okay, our final tip is looking at this phenomena of being the prompt. Okay. People don't relish life admin. I certainly don't. I often lament, how can I be such a kind of busy professional and getting lots of things done and you know, quite diligent about things when it's over here, and then just, you know, chaos and delays and procrastination on life admin over here. Um, People defer. And so we need to kind of be present so that actually that idea that they had, this is a good idea, I do want to do it. We don't let it just fall to the bottom of the to-do list of like, oh yeah, I'm a bit busy this weekend, I won't do it. But just being around, prompting people, nudging people. So I'll show you some examples of that. People worry about it getting it wrong. They just have a fear that, you know, that's often part of the reason why people do procrastinate on life admin. I'm just worried I'm going to get the wording wrong. I'm worried that I'm going to make the wrong choice of insurance. So I just won't deal with insurance. We need to get over some of those fears. How can we help them to know that they're doing it the right way? Our advice, break it into steps for people. Help your audience to see through your communications that it is okay to have different steps in making the actual change to their will, and really be the person that they then regard, the organization that they then regard has been helpful to them. Use wording, suggest wording to them. So I just want to share with you what that starts to look like. Your overall approach should cover these three phases. You should be trying to generate people, the interest of people, get them to raise their hand and kind of go, well, I'm up for talking a bit more about this. And that can be literally talking to you about it or continuing to receive communications from you about it. We'd suggest that you try to get to a stage where you're genuinely driving people to inquire. Yes, I want more information about how to do this. Then you can move into this second stage where you're actually kind of going, okay, I'm going to take you on a supportive journey towards actually making the change to my will. And finally, give them special treatment. Those who tell you that they have updated their wills, make sure that you stay in contact with them, make sure that you're providing them with a special kind of experience. There's evidence to suggest that when people don't receive that, they're not going to ask you for it. In fact, they'd be quite offended if you implied that they wanted it. But there is evidence that when they don't receive it, that those organizations can sometimes then be taken out of someone's will because people start to then kind of go, well, maybe that organization just isn't the same as I thought it was. Maybe they're not organized in the same way. And so they just end up taking them out. So you need to stay present is really the lesson there. Okay, I'm not going to talk to you about all of this, but I wanted to share with you examples of how organizations are creating new programs and deliberately, therefore, creating this communications journey to support one person to be able to talk to multiple people. What this is really looking at doing is using, on the left-hand side, various ways of getting people to raise their hand so that then the individual fundraiser, the lone fundraiser, can then actually start to pass them through this journey in which really they then only make contact by the telephone or in person at really the sort of fifth step you can see here going from left to right. So from left to right, if you are already communicating with audiences, start to include a little form box that sort of says, by the way, some people like you are interested in leaving us a gift in their will. Is this something you would consider? Just start including that on multiple communications because those who tick that, you can go, thank you very much. You've now indicated that you're worth me spending time on, whereas the rest of your community have not yet. Okay, so it's really about starting to get targeted. Maybe you can have a landing page on your website that introduces this, has that social proof story. Maybe it has some of those historical moments, and you can have a form that they can fill in to say, please send me information. I'm curious about this. I want to know more. All of this is driving people towards what we call an inquiry pack that you can put together. Those examples I was sharing earlier on from Médecins Sans Frontières and Vinnie's and WWF, they're inquiry packs. People have said, I'm interested in this. Please send me some information. Other suggestions, if you do any surveys around what type of satisfaction people have with your performances, then also start to include a question. Again, use that social proof technique, saying some of our other members of our community have decided to leave us a gift in their will. Is this something you would consider? Yes or no? Is it something you intend to do? Yes or no? Is it something that you've already done? Yes or no? Understanding where people are at on that journey, right from that survey moment, very helpful. Or you can do very specific mail outs, emails out to your audience of the kinds that I was just sharing that the Wilderness Society have done. These kind of memory-based mail outs to people deliberately saying, I want to have a conversation with you about gifting wills. Then I'd suggest you can set these up so that there are specific things that you're just checking in with people. First email might be, did you get the inquiry pack that I sent? Hope that that's working for you. Please remember I'm here. Please contact me if you've got any questions. The second email might be like, it's been a while since we sent you that inquiry pack. Would it be okay if I reached out to you? Perhaps you could let me know your phone number or let me know what a convenient way to be in contact with you is. And then, of course, getting to that person-to-person moment. If your organization has it, this can even be set up somewhat automated, yeah, so that it's actually triggered by time periods passing. But what you're doing is you're just conveying this kind of sense of I'm here, I've got you if you need me. And then you're moving into I really am here, I really want to make sure that this is something that you've considered and thought about. One of the things that we've discovered is that there can be a difference between the stage where people are sort of like, yeah, I'm curious about this, I'm interested in it. So giving them that quite inspiring, kind of profound communication that talks about why this is a way for them to their passions and interests and their identity to live on after they've passed. That's quite different to the stage where it's like, yeah, I'm into it. I just don't know what I'm doing. So we refer to these as the opportunity to really give them the planning information. Again, this can sit on your website. It should sit on your website, but you can also mail it out to people. We've got an example here from Hunter Medical Research Institute, and we even changed the format so it feels like an instruction manual, right? So that people are like, oh, yeah, okay, this is very much credible information that I can follow. We make sure that we mention that lawyers have been involved in putting this information together. You can see in the middle here, hopefully you can see that picture of the couple with their arms around each other. We've got a call out box here that says, talk to your family. If you're planning to leave a gift in your will, make sure you talk to your family about their intentions. We're trying to ensure that we create this sincere and authentic position that we're not just grabbing your money. We actually genuinely want you to be thrilled about this decision and see that it has actually helped you with one of those psychological problems. So my takeaway from that, of course, fundraising is all about relationships. Your keen interest should be in understanding where your community is at, and where are they at with this idea of a decision that's really good for everyone, good for them, good for their relatives, if they have them, and certainly good for the future work that your organization can do. When you know, you can stay in touch with people. You can ensure that someone is really informed about your work, particularly those, as I say, who you want to receive this special treatment. You can allude to the fact that people will be joining this special group during this journey that you're taking people on as well. But I encourage you to then sort of come full circle back to those who have made this commitment and have told you, I've changed my will and you're in it. Treat them with the respect and the admiration that that deserves. It is a profound gesture, but it is also one that is deeply personal. So treat them as individuals and treat them with, of course, the respect that I know you would all have. This is an example from an organization that's somewhat closer to most of yours, the Royal Botanic Gardens in Victoria. Just wanted to show you an example of what I mean by this idea of special treatment. On the right-hand side here, we're referring to the group of people who have chosen to leave a gift in their will are referred to as our perennial gardeners. Every gift in will, no matter its size, contributes to the stability and strength of the gardens. It is a powerful way to define the legacy you want to leave. And we want to recognize everyone who has made that generous decision to leave their legacy in the gardens, which is why our perennial gardeners are a community of people who we see are invested in the future of the gardens. So this, really a cultural icon of Melbourne, actually spelling out for people, that's the sort of label, the identity that we will assign to you as just one of the ways that we will respect your decision and keep you included and informed about our work. If you are a smaller organization, and some of the examples that I'm sharing, I wanted to show you, this is what successful organizations are doing as good practice. But I also want to recognize that, if you are a smaller organization, please use your size as an advantage. Some of the organizations that I'm showing there are working with hundreds, if not thousands, of relationships. And what they know is that they need to ramp up the authentic person-to-person approach. These communications are intended to help you to spend time, genuinely deep time, meeting with people, spending time with them, understanding their lives, but spending it with the right people. Now, if you're a smaller organization, you've got smaller volume of people to be worrying about, and therefore really ramp up those personal touches, that you are a genuine real person who is in contact with them. Handwritten notes, cards, things that don't feel like marketing communications, photos taken on your phone and sent to them. It all helps to kind of build this kind of sense of, I could keep this person informed about where my head is at in terms of this big, profound decision, and I could certainly reach out to them for help if I needed it. So there we go. 3 suggestions to things that are working for different organizations that I think apply to yours. we've now got 20 minutes for any questions. Anything that I've shared that you kind of have a question for clarity, or anything that actually just helps you to envisage how am I going to put this into practice for my organization?
Thanks, Dan. I do have a question, but firstly, people joining today, do put some questions in the chat there, and I will get to them shortly. But something that sprung to mind to me recently is, every week, every day, people are investigating gifts and wills. It's something that it's going on in the background. Most recently, myself having to, think about what does my will look like, um, and it was so great to hear about using, smaller organizations using size to your advantage because I reflected with Dan earlier this week about, my interest about wanting to support, um, leave some support in my will to smaller arts organizations where I really, from the side, I see their impact and I see what they do, but I really, really struggled to when I was doing some desktop research to actually find, do they want to accept a will? Like, do they want to receive a bequest? And it made me think about this particular session and going, why are we not including that information out there in our communications? And so, I think we've got um, a, a, a lot of room to grow in this space. But I wanted to go back to a point that you said that made me think. And Dan, maybe you can give us a tip here. When you've been working with an organization that's at the start of their, gifts and wills communications journey, what is like a guiding question that you've given them to think about to help refine, their case or for their communications? Like, what is a great question that they should think about answering?
That is a fabulous question, actually, because I think one of the amazing things about this type of fundraising is it really does go require you to go to the core of why should anyone care?
Mm,
And so there's a fabulous researcher here in Australia called Dr. Cassandra Chapman, and her work has revealed that really people think about two identity factors, either their own identity, and we'll come back to talk about that, or the identity of the beneficiary. So I do encourage, and I encourage all of you to think about which of those is most relevant to the work of your organization. Okay, so do they consider this other beneficiary being a really important kind of factor in why they're passionate about perhaps the work that your organization does? Or have they consistently seen themselves as the beneficiary? Okay,
mm,
they've been the attender of your events or the kind of consumer of the art that your organization's been creating. Um, if there is an other beneficiary, if there is an aspect to your work and what the funding that a gifting will provide into the future that really benefits someone that's considered disadvantaged, then really sort of test that with people. Really kind of start to kind of go, is this one of the reasons why you might consider giving to us? Because perhaps you enable an otherwise disadvantaged group of Australians to access this art form. And they perhaps otherwise wouldn't. You give them that opportunity. So it can be children, it can be people in lower socio economic groups, it can be people with illnesses. It can sometimes be about people living with disabilities, and it can be the elderly.
mm,
But if this isn't a factor, then move to really considering deeply. So why do individuals love this type of art? What is it? What is it that makes this the thing that tickles them? How is it that our art form is perhaps connected to their life story? Is if it's a music form, does that mean that they've been connected to that for a very long time, perhaps even from a childhood, learning to play an instrument, and then that coming through in their love of chamber music or orchestras? Or they're a creator themselves. So how is that connected? Or is it about the way that your particular art form and maybe even your own organization has a narrative that you are thought-provoking and that you have been consistent in presenting something that creates a connection in people's lives? So get some clarity on that, because that really speaks to what is your value proposition as
Mm.
an organization. And then think about, therefore, okay, so we're looking for the people whose own identity connects with ours quite closely. My sense is if you are not running things that are really driven at this other beneficiary group, it is deeply about their own identity. And then it's about just making sure that you have the clarity to kind of be able to say, well, what has our curation been historically and that will continue far into the future? What is it that we have a reputation for? I sometimes liken this somewhat uh, in popular music. We've just had Oasis coming to Australia, right? And everybody going crazy. I thought it was a really great example was when Prince came to Australia, right? And he had a new album and he was absolutely spruiking that new album, but he knew that the audience wanted to hear a lot of his classic hits, and that actually, if he connected his new work to his classic hits, people would actually embrace the concert and would even buy the new album. And that's the approach that I encourage you guys to kind of consider and take as well. Your classic hits, connecting them to, we're going to keep on producing those into the future. That's what you can connect people to.
I'm
Um,
scratching my head. I'm trying to think when Prince came to Australia. Now, I want to think about I'm an arts organization that has an existing bequest program. We've had messaging. I'm thinking about can we tap on a little bit about the evolution of the message? And because obviously you wouldn't want to keep the same messaging forever. And with some of the examples that you provided earlier, um, do you have examples about that particular process? I know as you build the kind of the social and you've got more stories and you've got more things to say, how often would you recommend people to evolve their messaging, um, and how to go about that so that things do stay fresh and relevant?
I think that's a good question because we I absolutely sort of advocate for when you build these kind of programs, they should be built to last. And the communications themselves, the positioning, the framing really should be something that can endure 5+ years. Because the time that you're going to invest in making them, you then want to be able to kind of go, right, we've got that sorted. We're very clear what our pitch is and our narrative is. We just need to get out there and keep on talking about the same thing. We often get tired of our communications way before our audience has even really sort of begun to kind of twig, oh yeah, that's what they're going on about. So something like coming up with that identity of the perennial gardeners for Royal Botanic Gardens Victoria. That's nearly a decade that's existed, and I would still be saying to them now, don't change it. Like keep that, keep it going, keep it going. So you actually answered the question. Really, the how to keep it fresh is with the new stories that still enable you to kind of connect back up to that overarching theme. So another example of a family, another example of one of your events or exhibitions or performances that you can then link to this overarching intent that you will always have, or the connection that it created. So try to sort of keep something that's going to last and endure, but then keep it fresh with the chapters that are within that story. But yeah, I in many of these forms of fundraising, we see people refreshing a little bit too quickly because it's just like, whoa, 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 your audience hasn't told with that. You have, or
Yeah.
you've come into the organization and gone, I don't really like that, so I'm going to change it. have a think carefully about how you navigate that. The prompting of people is where a lot of the movement really comes. So yeah, hope that answers the question.
So Dan, we've got a question here from Kaya. Do you have any research showing the target demographic for silent boomers is less likely to respond to digital campaigns and more likely to respond to a paper mail pack?
Yeah, I mean, it's more, yes, research in terms of just continuously being in the market and seeing what the results are. So the first form of information that sits with this is actually appeals. So when you're going out to people who make a donation of $30, $50, $100, $200, even up to $5,000, um, the generations we showed are silent and boomer with a little bit of X. And if you remove direct mail from the channel mix, the income drops significantly. We see people engaging with the mail and then going online to actually make transactions in terms of appeals. And that makes sense to us. But if we therefore kind of go, oh, people just want to experience things digitally and take away the direct mail, all the income starts to fall
Mm.
away. So people still like the channel of direct mail. Now, when it comes to gifting wheels, you would have seen some of the nature of the conversation is we're trying to get people to slow down and be a bit contemplative. This is a planned giving act, and mail and print enables you to curate that experience in quite a lovely way. We're still using digital communications for responds now, do this quickly, blah, 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 blah. And we see in testing email, shorter emails featuring emojis and things like this work better than long copy emails are. And you kind of go, that's not appropriate for a gift and rules conversation. And so that's why we would also sort of say, make sure you are including and using direct mail. It does enable you. The other thing is it's lower volume, right? So
Mm.
the format of your mailing for a bequest program can stand out from the standard DL bill or invoice or charity appeal for please will you help this homeless family, okay, by going slightly larger because you're not going to be worrying about trying to come in under the Australian Post charity mailing benefits. So go bigger. You're already paying for a stamp, so go to the biggest size that you can. And therefore, people kind of do engage with it. They're kind of like, what's this? I don't receive these very often. So yes, it's the short answer. It's not necessarily, it's it's live practice of watching how people respond and engage. Now, that said, absolutely get your website updated. The very thing that Matt was describing earlier of, does this organization even want me to leave them a gifting will? That needs to be on your website because when people do start to consider this, they do online research. So that research does exist. And so if your website doesn't even mention this as a way that people can support, then you're just gonna lose out. It's weird. We just end up thinking, oh, they must not want that. Rather than, oh, they must not have thought to put information on their website. So do use the online, do use email for some of those kind of ways of saying I'm here if you need me, but also use the mail for these more considered, contemplative communications.
Dan, at what point do you think in a donor's relationship with an arts organization is it the most appropriate to first introduce the concept of a gift and will?
Yeah, this is a tricky one because if you're not already receiving donations from an audience, then they are a cooler prospect than those who have at least some point made the leap from being a consumer and saying, doesn't my ticket price pay for this, or doesn't the government funding that you received to put this on cover you? They've made the leap into recognizing, no, I want to contribute. I want to uplift and elevate
Mm.
it in some way. So if you are fortunate to have already worked on how to convert people to becoming supporters, then I would say they are a great audience. Now, if you have been fortunate to get people to give to you multiple times, then they're an even better prospect. Okay, because sometimes people give once and then they never give again. So I would suggest have a look for people who've given at least more than once. they're your best prospects. The longer that they've had tenure of giving, so getting 2 years, 3 years, they've done it repeatedly over those years. Maybe they give each time you have an annual appeal, better, 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 better. But the reality is that some of you won't have made that leap. So
Yep.
when is the appropriate time to do it? Well, if you have any ability to judge repeat visitations, consumption of your art form, repeat ticket purchases, membership, then those are the audiences to go for. Now, remember, I was saying that some of the social proof work can happen anywhere. So that's certainly that sort of negates the question in some ways, because a poster within your foyer with someone's story, whilst some people are waiting for their date to arrive, or some people are waiting for their notorious friend who's always late to arrive. That's not targeted at all. That's just saying any of you could read this. But I would sort of say have a think about what kind of commitment have they shown to your organization, whether it's through repeat attendance, repeat ticket purchases, membership, or the holy grail of, wow, these people are already giving to us and have given to us more than once. That's the sort of scale. Um, when you know that someone has been around your organization as a volunteer for a long time, great. Long time, 2 to 3 years plus. Also great, because their identity is I give up my free time to do something with your organization. So also someone who is a good prospect.
Dan, we have a few questions. People asking for templates for, and correct wording to provide to people who are, that they may want to include in their collateral or and so forth. And I recommend that if you are interested, a great place to start is not with Creative Australia, but is with Arts Law, and seek advice there. They do have resources there that with their membership that can support you in this area. Um, Dan, small organizations may not have the capacity for this ongoing relationship building. There's a question here from Anonymous. Are there some starting steps that cannot be missed?
Yes, get things up on your website. Get those social proof stories. As I say, just like even if you have to resort to, I have made this decision. I'm the fundraiser, and I've decided to do this. There's a reason why you've chosen to work at your organization, so you're still a fair representation. But yeah, those absolutely the two things. Make sure there's a really, please try to make sure there's a form on your website. And I don't mean a complicated long form. I just mean something that encourages people to go, please send me information, and then start that way. Because when you say we don't have the capacity for ongoing relationship building, I would argue that you should make that a priority if somebody has said, I want you to send me information about this, because then they are already revealing, I'm into this, I'm into this. So at least you're not spending time trying to nurture relationships and build relationships with people who haven't even given you any indication that they're curious and considering this. Just focus on those that do that. Hope that helps.
And that's really interesting because, as you said, a lot of these communications or channels, you want to lead them through to the inquiry. And so when somebody does make a query, may that be via telephone or via email, you'll be contacting them back. And the thought that did cross my mind for any organization, be it small or large, you need to be prepared to, you know, have those conversations and address those inquiries. So you do need to make sure that you are prepared and feeling comfortable to have those conversations with your supporters.
I think so. And I think I mean, I've always used communications as a crutch. Like when you spend the time working out what the website is going to say is the reason why this is a profound thing and that you welcome it and so on and so forth, you've then actually created, okay, great. Now I know how to actually have the conversation. Now, someone's put up in the Q&A something that this absolutely relates to. The reason why organizations are behind is because we're uncomfortable talking about this.
Mm.
And so if you're bored, they're also mortals that are kind of like, hang on a second, I don't want you talking to people about when they die. I don't want you chasing coffins. Ugh. So you need to work on what the narrative is in order to show them we're not. We're actually talking about something amazing, which is that their identity and their values and their principles can live on. And when you share people prototypes of what that looks like, you're not only getting the confidence yourself to be like, I'm comfortable talking about this now, you're also helping your board and other decision makers to go on that journey and go, that I'm okay with.
Yep. Fantastic. Now, Dan, I am conscious that we are at time, and so I would like to thank you and your team at Marlin for putting together today and working with us here
Thank you.
at Creative Australia. It's been fantastic, and I do feel from a Creative Australia point of view that we've got a few more conversations to have in this space so that we can improve and be better and grow that 4% to that average of the 20%. So thank you. Before we do go, I would just say that we are looking forward to next year with the Knowledge Series. We're giving it a little bit of a refresh. So if you do not already subscribe to the Creative Australia Partnerships and Philanthropy EDM, I encourage you to do so that you can hear about the Knowledge Series first there and book in. But also, we're always interested to hear about what you are wanting to hear from through the Knowledge Series, whether it's a particular speaker or a topic or a particular question. Feel free to email me personally at any time. My email address, and I'll say this slowly, is matt.morse@creative.gov.au, and I'll make sure that it's in the EDM that comes out in a few days. Um, Please write to me. Love to hear it. So thank you, everybody, for taking some time out of your busy schedules. We appreciate it. And we'll see you next time for another knowledge series. Take care. Cheers.